Did you see what I just saw? Are you kidding me? I just did an hour session with your team and they could barely interact with one another. They could barely communicate. You're okay allowing that to continue? The coach needs to be the driver of creating that environment that allows people to thrive, flourish, and succeed. When you start talking about high-performing cultures and leaders that are thriving, frankly, there's a good chance that when they are thriving in leadership, it is because their team is thriving in followership.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to be a part of the community where you can listen to more content to help you be a smarter, stronger, and better equipped, successful leader. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button. I would love and appreciate your support. It's amazing to me to watch the community grow and read all of your comments each and every week. I can't wait to go on the journey with you. Thank you so much, and it means the world to me. Welcome to the Impact Driven Leader Podcast with your host, me, Tyler Dickerhoof. On today's episode, I am joined by the amazing Adam Bradley. I say amazing because what he's doing in the world, I think is amazing personally. Adam is the founder and president of Lead 'em Up, a leadership and team performance organization that currently serves thousands of teams worldwide. He is also the lead professor at Towson University in Maryland of Nancy Grassmick's Leadership Institute, an outward-facing corporate leadership institute that works with organizations throughout the Baltimore and Washington markets. In addition, if that isn't already amazing enough, Adam serves as a direct consultant and coach for thousands of teams and organizations every year, working with them through one-on-one as a chief practitioner for the Leadership Circle, a nationally recognized leadership organization facilitating dynamic 360-degree leadership consultation. Adam, dude, that's exciting to read, isn't it?
It is exciting to read, especially when you think about where things were years ago, right? And just the journey to get there. You know, it sounds really cool right now. It wasn't always in that place, but I've been able to grow a lot over the last few years and really elevate kind of the offering and where things are. And in a good place, man. Excited to be here with you, Tyler.
So let's start this way. Obviously, you have a profession in leadership. You're helping others that are in a leadership role. How do you find leadership? How do you define leadership, especially in the context of youth sports and development?
I mean, it really comes down to just our ability to influence others after we influence ourselves, right? So when we think about leadership, you know, we say leadership's not about you, but it starts with you. So one, it's our ability to lead ourselves really, really well. And get the most out of ourselves and be able to engage in the right disciplines and the right maturity and the right growth mindset and all these things that help get the most out of ourselves, and then moves into a place where we then can better influence others. It's really that hybrid approach about being able to kind of elevate yourself, then in turn elevating others. And you really can't have one without the other. You know, the reality is if you can't lead yourself well, you're going to lose credibility when you steps into the arena of trying to lead others well. So you've got to be able to lead yourself. And then when you step into that space, trying to get others to, what we say, move closer to winning. I mean, it's the term it's the catch-all phrase, Tyler. You know, we want to move people closer to winning. Winning, when you look at it in a deeper definition, thriving, flourishing, and succeeding. And can we do that by the way we interact with them, the way we communicate with them, the way we challenge them, cast vision for them, a lot of different facets there, but ultimately influencing and elevating yourself and then being able to then influence and elevate others.
Like, all right, you work within sports primarily, but, you know, people will quickly say that, oh, sports, whatever. But it's bigger than that, right? Like, how do you quantify as you go about your work and as you're saying, no, this really matters in a big way? Because people say only a small percentage make it past high school or whatever else, but it's a bigger reason. But how do you ground yourself in that, or how do you describe it when you share that with people, the importance of what they're doing?
I mean, the reality is when the leader improves, everybody wins. Everybody, including the person. And I don't think any one of us want to think about our future without any growth. I mean, if I told you, Tyler, who you are and where you are is the best you'll ever be, that would not be a very...
Done.
You're done. You're capped. You've reached your full potential. That would not be a very encouraging message to hear and to share with somebody. And the reality is we are all on this journey, and it is a requirement. it is an obligation and an opportunity that we have as individuals to continue to grow and constantly elevate. And for us, leadership development and the work that we do is it is a stimulation of growth. Like, we are growing people, and in today's world, it has to be part of what you do. It has to be part of your DNA to keep growing. And once again, I don't think you want to hear a message without what growth looks like. So for us, when we're casting vision, we're just kind of leaning right into that, right? We're leaning into this understanding that everyone needs to keep growing, then flipping it and looking at the consequences if we stop growing, which is one we don't want to wrestle with. And then in light of that, when you kind of position it that way, I think the buy-in starts kind of opening up a little bit, because who doesn't want, like, everyone I think would be afraid to know this reality that, like, my growth is done. Right.
Yeah.
I've reached my cap. I think that's what that'd be a reality that people would not want to face. And when they kind of position it that way, I think people lean into it a little bit greater than wanting to get better, wanting to grow in all different areas, Tyler.
So as you're saying that, and I'm rubbing my face, because it's the reason why I'm excited to have this conversation is because I understand the impact, both personally, outwardly. I've seen it myself. I've seen it in others. And I think back such a conversation I had last summer. And it was a coach. He was a high-level soccer coach. And there were just some situations going on. And I made the comment, it's like, man, this is an opportunity for you to grow. And the response was, I'm not in a place to grow. And I take that because of what you just said. As you asked me, if this is all that I'll ever be, I'm done, forget about it. It's not worth, because I know there's better. But yet I also feel like there's people you and I talk to every day. There's people that you serve that I aim to serve in that growth that are thinking like, man, I got so much to do. If I'm a, youth sports, I got to figure out how to technically get their skills up so we can actually compete. I don't have time to go work on being a better leader and communicate and connect and all these things that I know you say are important. There's so much to do. I got to work on that stuff, because that's why I get hired and fired. But and I know that that's what people tell themselves, but that's not the reality. So how do we bridge that gap? It's a deep breath. It's a deep breath moment. It's a deep breath question, right?
Yeah, you could see that. Because there's so much depth there. It's really interesting, Tyler. Let me back up for a second. When we started Lead 'em Up in 2015, I believed, and I was actually wrong in this. I believe my biggest challenge was going to be to get players to buy in, to actually get them to want to buy in into this notion of growing as a leader, developing their character. Once again, character, not just what we call moral character connected to one's integrity, but also their mental character connected to one's performance, right? That whole capture of character. I thought that was going to be the challenge, getting that buy-in. And frankly, that's been easy money, Tyler. That's been a cakewalk. The players are in. Yeah. Ironically and disheartening in many ways, the buy-in from coaches has actually been the challenge, right? And for them wanting to set aside time to develop the athlete from a leadership character standpoint, wanting to commit on that, man, that has not been the easiest sell. And you would think it wouldn't be that way. You would think they'd be all in, right? And it would be the players, but no, it's been very different. And you got to ask yourself the questions, why? Yeah. Why is that? And, I think sometimes, the coaches lean into a place where their ego begin building a little bit larger than it should. I always just want to ask ourselves in the sports space, like, who's the star of this show?
Ooh.
Who's the star of this show? And right now, there are still way too many coaches, certainly not all, right, where they want and believe they are the star of the show, right? And in light of that, they think they've got it all figured out. They want to control every aspect. They want to manage every component of it. So then it gets to the point, Tyler, to your point, where they feel like they don't have the time. They don't have the time to do this type of stuff, and they can't justify sacrificing film study or strength and conditioning work and tactical strategy work. And all of a sudden, this area gets kind of pushed off to the side. And for us, I think Head coaches need to be reminded they are the CEOs of programs. And if you saw CEOs trying to do everything and anything themselves, you'd say, wow, you're a horrible delegator. Like, wow, what type of organization are you running? What CEO does everything and anything? Coaches need to not feel the pressure that they need to be able to do it all. They need to allow others' expertise to round out theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And there are programs and offerings that are available to them that could allow them to be able to kind of unleash this area of growth on their team without them having to feel like they need to do the whole thing. And frankly, they need to wrestle with that reality of that, like, you know what, I shouldn't be doing everything. There are opportunities. The goal of the coach should be this, very simple, Tyler. They should do everything and anything within, obviously, morality to try to position their team and players to win. They should do everything and anything within morality, of course, to try to position their players and put them in a position to win. And if that means, you know what, I go grab Tyler because Tyler's a dynamic communicator that can help kind of shift the perspectives of my players, I should do that. If I should go out and find that nutritionist, I should do that. If I should go out and find that strength and conditioning coach, I should do that. And can I holistically put together, right, the collection, right, where I'm not the center of it, but yet I am pulling all the pieces and kind of bringing it all together and then serving my athletes the best that they can be. The coaches that are doing that, you're seeing the uptick in their programs. You're seeing the performance improvement. You're seeing players that are just showing up different for them regularly. And for us, we can't ignore the fact that this stuff matters. And if you say, 90% of sports is mental, 80% of sports is mental, whatever those little terms that people always throw out, then why the heck is your practice plan and your developmental model so skewed in the opposite direction?
Well,
Tyler, I'm getting hot here, man. I'm really passionate about this. But
I've lived it. You've lived it. I've seen it. I've seen it as a parent. I've seen it as, an assistant coach. And I wrote down here, you said, all right, is it, I'm going to paraphrase because I'm trying to read my writing. I wrote it quick. And the question is it time? Because you said time. We don't have the time in practice plans. We don't have the time in our free time. Is it time? Or is it fear? Fear of being vulnerable is I'm the coach and I don't have it all figured out. I'm fearful of being exposed. I'm fearful of if this goes backwards, meaning it doesn't make us better, then all of a sudden I'm fearful people are going to think he's a bad coach, she's a bad coach. All of a sudden I'm out of a job. That fear is more of a driver than time.
It's not time. It's not time. It 100% is not time. And I'd say it's a combination of fear per se. I'd say it's a combination of a handful of things, if you don't mind.
A handful. All right, let's get into it.
It's 100% not time. And that one makes me very frustrated.
It's kind of like this. And unfortunately, to interject here, time to me is like money. Hey, I'm not getting paid enough to do this job. Oh, I need more money. It's never about the money. It's not about time, right? Is that fair?
Well, it's just, your priorities in the relationship to time, speak to one another, okay? So the reality is when you actually say it's time, you need to stop saying that because you are tricking yourself into thinking you care about this, that if time was allowed or you had more time, you would do it. No. The time is there. So when you say what you're doing is you're making an excuse and you're deflecting off owning it. I'd rather you just say this is not a great enough priority. And I think it's a couple things. I think there's a priority. I think where it ranks in the priority of coaches scales. Right? So I think that's one dynamic, Tyler. I do think there's some fear that frankly I've seen this firsthand, Tyler, when they begin to teach some of this leadership work, they end up finding themselves being the ones feeling most convicted from the work that they're trying to teach because all of a sudden they realize, wow, I'm not the best at this myself, right? Holy smokes. And I got to step up my game because I can't be one who is preaching what I can't practice on the back end. So I think there is some uncertainty there and maybe some fear. But I also think in all fairness to coaches, I think coaches respond to their most urgent needs. I think they respond to the most urgent needs. And frankly, the leadership and growth of the human, of the individual, is more of a long-term play, right? It doesn't necessarily produce immediate returns on your investment by tomorrow. And I could be a football coach and it's like, listen, my quarterback can't even collect a snap from under center, right? Like, I would love that kind of leadership character stuff, but like, or I'm a basketball coach in women's basketball, and my team can't even throw an inbound, right? Inbound pass, without getting it turned over. And I've got to work on that now. I just think I think there's a need right now in programs and sports to really build this holistic program. You're seeing this movement in a major way to build the holistic thing. And we say anything you want to see exist in your program has to be developed. And if you want to see your players show up with greater competitiveness, consistency, coachability, commitment levels, work ethic, passion, drive, enthusiasm, those are all character traits. They're all character traits and they have to be developed. And if you develop them, then everything else after becomes easier, right? It's why the math teacher should spend 2 days at the beginning teaching their kids how to learn before they start teaching them math to learn.
Sure.
Right? Because it will make the teaching of the math that much easier down the road.
Yeah.
Right? So for us, once again, from a coaching standpoint, I think it's they're responding to their most urgent need. I think there is a little bit of fear and insecurity that they are not good at that may call them out, right, on some of their shortcomings as a coach. I think 3, it is a lack of priority, right? It's just not a high enough priority on their list, because if it was, you'd see it on the calendar. And I think last but not least, I think it kind of goes back to just the ego. Like, no, and that ego can kind of just come from a variety of places, but they've got their ways that they've always done it. They had some success in the beginning of their careers, possibly, without doing it. Maybe they grew up under a coach that led maybe more by a fear-based leadership, do this or else, and they've just kind of grown accustomed to that. And they are just kind of a little bit closed off on new ideas, which is ironic because they would never want that mindset to be what the players have, to be one closed off of growth, but they sometimes have it themselves. Yeah. And once again, certainly generalizing, not speaking to every coach out there, but there are many out there. Yes.
Well, I think there's those multiple facets you shared, and it could be one, or it could be all of them, or it could be a mix and match that, and I think there's a component you talk about, the head coach, predominantly the CEO of the organization, but then you start having assistants that are pining for their positioning. You throw that into the mix, or I've seen this happen is say you have one of those assistants that maybe models it so well, and it's something they're passionate in. And you pointed out there's a conviction to the head coach, and they kind of feel like, oh, they're really good at that. They're convicting me because I'm not good at that. And they're building more trust and rapport with others because they model it so well. And you can tell that's what the players are yearning for. And now all of a sudden it becomes a power struggle. And they're saying, well, we are going to spend less time on that stuff because if I give less time to that, I'm in control and power, as opposed to you having more control and power. And then I get replaced because I'm fearful that if, you start having this, better relationship, it doesn't help the team, right? It just takes them away from you. So I can't control it. I've been in that situation. And here's what I find happens. Everyone loses. Everyone. And I think as you layer through those things, here's I want to take a kind of a tangent. We just talked, several minutes now about this situation predominantly in youth sports. And I want to kind of get you to weigh in, but go with me on this journey. We just talked about circumstances where coaches know it, but they won't do it. People know that they're supposed to, but they're not. And all these different conditions happen. And then all of a sudden, this player turns 18, they turn 20, they turn 22, and they're in the workforce. And now they remember back the experiences when they were 14, 15, 16, 17 with a coach and how they treated them as a leader. And now they're in some type of organization, right? And they're saying, oh, this has been my experience with leaders and what they do and what their focus and priority is. And now all of a sudden I'm in a different situation. Will I see the same or different to me? That's what's really amazing. is seeing how that all transcends.
And it can go one of two ways, Tyler. It can go where they emulate that leader, right? And be able to kind of take away the things, and all of a sudden it helps move them to that realization quicker. Or it becomes problematic and challenging that they're following and emulating those leaders from before, but doing all the wrong things because they just got they were given a role model, an example of all the things not to do, but they didn't necessarily know that per se. Now all of a sudden they're emulating. So I think when we think about the ripple effect of leadership, it's one thing that coaches always have to be reminded of. That there's a major ripple effect in our work that we do. I mean, the work we do with young people, I mean, it's hard to even trace it all the way down the line of the ripple effect. And the things that we are able to do now when they're young and kind of instill in them what that looks like and how it positions them to be better off. I mean, it's undeniable. It's incredible. But I think you bring up a good point that, like, what does it look like when they're 5 or 6 years removed? I mean, but do coaches care about that? They say they do.
Here's the question to ask. Is why else are you coaching 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18-year-olds? If you're not worried about that, then my question is, why are you doing it? Why?
It can't just be winning the middle school football championship. It can't just be that. I agree, Tyler. I agree.
But you're obviously in this space all the time with, administrators all the way through. And as you've probably had that burning question, right? You've probably posed it. And then there's the answer. It's like, oh, we're here for the kids. But then you see the results of them actually. Are you? Tell me about that situation.
I think it goes back to what I said earlier, Tyler. It's who's the star of the show?
Oh.
Who's the star of the show? And I think you really can see when coaches have themselves positioned with player first, and you can feel that difference. You also can feel the difference when it's kind of, that the coach's reputation or the coach's Hall of Fame pursuit or the coach's credibility amongst the other coaches and where they rank amongst others. You can really see, those deep latent desires, those deep embedded desires in coaches. I think when you find coaches that I think are developing the athlete deeper, right? And now in all fairness, Tyler, even those coaches that may not be all in on like leadership development, they still, though, they think they are. Let me just correct that. They think they are. You see, there's a lot of programs out there. I say this all the time. One of the best things coaches could do is step into a high performing culture, so it actually sheds a light on how non-performing their culture currently is.
Sure.
Right. And I think a lot of them, they're doing the best with what they know. And when they've been in their programs for a long time, they think this is good. They think it's relatively good. I've had some success. Oh yeah, we emphasize leadership. We talk about it for 5 minutes at the end of practice. I'm always bringing it up, right? We're always emphasizing it, right? I'll share a quote of the day, blah. All these little touch points of leadership, right? Little talking points of themes where they think that is encapsulating what a leadership development program is. And in all fairness, it is part of our job to kind of help them understand what it could look like, what it should look like, and what it is being demonstrated at other programs. And frankly, when they begin to see that, then all of a sudden everything changes. You don't know what you don't know. And one thing for us with the work we do, I'll take a coach, for example, that may be a little bit of a difficult sell a little bit. Let's just say, okay? But
what's a difficult sell?
Hey, you know what, Adam? Hey, yeah, we'll give it a try.
Okay.
We'll give it a try. You know what? I'll just go 3 sessions.
Okay.
I'll just go 3 sessions. because I've got teams that are 3 sessions, 6 sessions, 9 sessions, 12, right? And they're like the commitment levels are going. Now, obviously, you can purchase our program online and do it yourself, but we want you to get to 12 sessions a year. We think a full captured leadership program in the athletic space today are 12 uninterrupted, distraction-free, 60-minute of intentional leadership development. You capture 12 during the course of a year, in season, off season. You are truly kind of illustrating to your team and program that we are emphasizing this. You're setting aside the appropriate amount of time based on our surveys and data points. So you get a coach says, yeah, I'll do 3. I'll do 3. Okay. Yeah, I'll give it a try, right? Blah, blah, blah. What they begin to see after the 3, they begin to see that where their program, although they thought it was at this level, all of a sudden they begin to get this realization like maybe we're not where we could be. And they don't know before, right? It's like the sheep in the green valleys.
Yeah.
It's like the sheep in the green valley story, right? Someone from a distance looking at the sheep, oh my gosh, they tell the farmer, wow, your sheep's coat is so beautiful. I love their wool coats. It is so pristine, so pretty. And then moments later, it snows. And when you look at the same coat on that sheep, on the backdrop of white, perfect snow behind them, you see all the flaws, all the dirtiness of the wool coat on the sheep, right? But when put up against a different background, looks so clean. Very similar to that. In their mind, no, our program's really good. It's really strong. Oh yeah. Well, let me tell you my experience. I just did 3 sessions with your team. Let me share some feedback.
So give me some examples. Like somebody's listening and they're like, okay, Adam, I like, what does that look like?
Yeah. All right. I'm the constant. The teams are the variables. I always say that. I teach the same thing every single time, almost the same words, same jokes, same story, same teachings. I'm the constant, okay? Anytime you have statistics, you always want a constant, measure it up against the variables, and then kind of weigh and see. The teams are the variables. So I may teach the same exercise 5 days this week to 5 different high school and collegiate teams. I get to now walk away and evaluate all 5 of them and say, why did they buy in and they didn't? Why did they have a great time and they didn't? Why did they love it and they, it took 45 minutes to go in? Now, what are some indicators of this, okay? Right? Indicators. Man, there's so many dynamics. First off, is there a willingness to be vulnerable around their peers? That is a very big insight into their culture of their program, right? The cool factor amongst young people, how high is that turned up? Okay. In turn, when it is turned up, you will sit back. You will kind of just go through it. You won't be an active participant. So I'm grading that a little bit. I'm evaluating a little bit of commentary from others when others do chime in. So when someone gives a response and gives an answer, what is the response of everyone else in the room when they hear their teammate share an answer? Is it a little bit of a laugh, a little bit of a clowning, right? And if that's the case, maybe we've got an uptick in our clowning culture, which then decreases our vulnerability, because I'm not going to step out and be vulnerable to try to lead if I suspect my friends and teammates are going to make jokes and clown, right? So I'm paying attention to that. We engage in a variety of different celebrations. How trained and comfortable is the players to celebrate others? Right? Because on some cultures, I have to cut off the celebrations because it just keeps going. Where others, I have to beg for the celebrations of others to get going. Right? Now, all of a sudden, I give these little indicators. Are they willing to jump in and laugh and have fun with their teammates, or are they kind of more on their own? Do they look to others to answer questions rather than take the initiative and answer it for themselves, where they feel empowered and cultivated and they have a voice and they know there's that confidence to speak up, versus someone who sits back maybe because coach always answers the question or coach dominates the show. And all of a sudden they're just kind of co-stars where the coach is the star. Looking at all these different factors, but at the end I can give feedback and do very kind of clear analytical comparisons to say, hey, let me just tell you, there were a couple things that kind of got my attention. I was noticing, do you remember when we did that exercise and nobody volunteered? Yeah, man, that's going to give me, that gives us some insight. It's really interesting. Why are they not comfortable around each other? Hey, remember when I asked for questions or for answers on this? Like I'd have to kind of ask a couple times and go through a little period of silence of 5 to 7 seconds where my silence communicated to them that I'm not going to answer this for you. I'm going to wait till someone volunteers. Did you notice how I had to wait like 7 or 8 seconds almost after every question to get someone to answer? I'm going to tell you, that's not how it is on all programs. That's not how it is in all teams. Hey, remember how like when I had them do the 9 clap and they wouldn't really do it? Man, I tell you, man, there's a lot of other teams that they go above and beyond the 9 clap. And all of a sudden I'll start painting this picture and then all of a sudden coach is like, wow, I see what you're saying. It's interesting, Tyler, one thing I'll say on this. When I first started, I used to save sessions.
Okay.
Here's what I mean by that. I used to save sessions. I'd go in, and let's say a coach was like, hey, I'll have you come out for a time, 1 or 2 times, and like we'll give it a try, right? See what this is all about. And I'd be doing a communication exercise, maybe our sugar and salt, really interactive, really fun, really sticky. And in the beginning when I would do it and the players would struggle, I mean, it would be clunky. They wouldn't be communicating well. They wouldn't know what to say. They'd be very uncomfortable and quiet and shy. I used to find myself jumping in and saving them.
Mm-hmm.
Where I'd say like, hey, Ashley, all right, here, think about this. Ashley, maybe you do this. And like kind of guiding them and almost holding their hand through the exercise, Tyler. Can I tell you now? I let the session struggle for a bit. I eventually will jump in, but when there's those awkward silences and like the clunkiness and the uncomfortable and just, the awkwardness of young people sometimes in communication.
I wouldn't say just young people. People.
All people. Fair point. I sit back and let it breathe for a minute. And in the beginning, I was insecure that it would make the session seem not as fruitful, not as effective, not as dynamic, right? Because it felt a little awkward. Now, I'm trying to illustrate a point. Oh, if you all didn't think we needed to work on this, did you just watch this? Did you see what I just saw? Are you kidding me? We can't even communicate well. Coach, how are you not putting time and effort? I just did an hour session with your team and they could barely interact with one another. They could barely communicate. Did you feel the awkwardness, coach? Oh, I felt it. You're okay allowing that to continue? Come on, coach. No way. No way. Now it illustrates this point more clear than ever that this is an area that is not where it needs to be, that we need to develop the skill. And if you want to see your players communicate and you're not putting in the work, you are setting them up for failure. You are asking them to perform and achieve something that you have not developed and help them equip. It doesn't work that way, Tyler.
Everything you've shared, it doesn't matter, as I mentioned, if you're speaking with 16-year-olds, 21-year-olds, or, a mixed age, office setting.
And just so you know, half my work is corporate.
Yeah, it's all the same, right? To me, as you mentioned, the different things, the trust, the vulnerability, the open communication, the willingness to be engaged. In my mind, I believe it centers on one person. That's my mind. I may be wrong. Would you, as you go through that, as you identify, you think about those situations where you're interacting with those teams or organizations, are they the ones, like who is responsible for that? Because you said it varies. Who's responsible for their interaction and what they're doing?
I mean, the coach is, the coach at the forefront needs to be the driver of it, but the players need to bring it to life. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the coach needs to be the driver of creating that environment that allows people to thrive, flourish, and succeed, right? And there's many and multiple facets within that. Now, how do you actually accomplish that? I think that's part of, the conversation. And I think this is where we come in and help coaches understand what's it look like and what's it take to get that in type of environment. Because once again, being very thoughtful in this, coaches are once again doing the best with what they know. If you're a football coach, maybe you grew up kind of learning football. You don't know the psychology of people per se, right? You don't know what it looks like fully to kind of unleash a team to its fullest potential from the psyche and the team dynamic issue. For me, to answer your question, Tyler, when I think about why so many of these programs are not reaching their fullest potential from a team building standpoint, okay? Couple of thoughts on this, if you're okay with me sharing.
Yeah, please.
One, so we push back pretty heavily on the word team building. Just so you know, we're not big on that. Anytime we hear it, we always correct it. We believe we're people building, because if you build the people will build the team. In fact, we say team building is a backwards approach. In fact, how do you build a team without developing the people first? Right. So for us, we've got to develop the people. And if we can get the people to demonstrate the right character, i.e. who they are, and then engage in the right behavior, i.e. their leadership, right, you're going to start moving the team forward. One thing we have to understand, it's been a core teaching dynamic for us. You will not unleash your team's culture, your workplace culture on the backs and shoulders of a few leaders alone. We need everybody on board. It's why a few years ago, we kind of made a decision that we do not do exclusive work with leadership groups, leadership councils, captains, or leadership teams. Right? So coach, well, hey, I've got these captains. Hey, I've got these group of leaders. And we will do extra work with them, but not exclusive work. And my question always simply goes, okay, listen, I would love to explore this with them. I'd love to work with that small group there. Just out of curiosity, though, what is the plan for everybody else?
Yeah.
What is the plan for everybody else? You see, because when we think about why our teams aren't reaching their fullest potential, oftentimes what we find, it's not because we lack leaders, and it's not because we lack people who want to lead, and it's not even because we lack leaders who don't know how to lead. That's not even it. Although it plays a small part, the reality is, more often than not, every time our leaders step out to lead, they are met with resistance from those they are leading. Okay, and most leaders won't engage in what we call persistence through resistance. They just won't. If every time I step out to lead, or every time I step up and speak, if I am met with pushback, defiance, clowning, joking, defensiveness, I'm going to eventually stop. It's why we say every single person in the room needs to be shifting their perspective in their leadership while simultaneously being taught their followership. One of the big components of what we teach and lead them up is followerships. One's performance level and following the leader. In the reality, there are 3 levels of followership. There are those that are challenging to lead, easy to lead, and enjoyable to lead. And it doesn't matter how great of a leader you are, if every time I step out, I am facing people that are challenging to lead. My leadership will always be stifled and will not reach its full potential. So for us, when we think about these team environments, we keep thinking when we aren't growing, it is because the leader is not leading, when in reality, that may not be the case. Your issue may not be a leadership issue, it may be a followership issue, right? Because we have to be those that are enjoyable to lead, that support the leader. Now, who is the leader? Everybody, because we teach rotational leadership. Leadership is an ongoing, constantly changing relationship between leader and follower that changes day by day, hour by hour, minute by minute, Tyler. Right? You're the lead of this show, but when I'm talking, you're following my lead. And then I stop and now I'm following your lead. We're in this together. So from a team standpoint, everybody needs to be moving forward in their leadership development. Everybody in the room. And they need to be getting taught leadership work and followership work. Because half the time you are engaging in the role of a leader, half the time you're engaging in the role of a follower, no matter your rank, experience, title, hierarchy, no matter all those details. So if you play both roles, you need to be high performers in both areas. And what we often see is that teams that are not thriving, flourishing, and succeeding, it's not because they lack leaders in the room. The reality is it's just the rest of the group does not fall in line, does not support, does not honor the leader in a way that makes them enjoyable to lead and causes major resistance up and down the team.
The element that there just hits me is I think probably when you have the positional leader at top, whether that be the coach, whether that be the captain, whatever it is, and if they are not actively showing at other points followership, it's going to be really hard for people to engage in that dance, because then it often comes back to that ego, that insecurity, that all those different things where if I'm actively engaged following you and vice versa, then it becomes something we can progress forward together, which to me, and as I'm thinking about this, is a show of empathy. I define empathy as putting your arm around someone and walking with them. There is no position, there is no whatever, but if we have to walk collectively together, I can't drag you, you can't drag me. And if we do, we're going to choke each other out. That's what happens. So, but you also have to be vulnerable to put your arm around someone, to expose yourself. That's what I see. And what I hear from you is that great dance of leaders, followers is an example of that.
It is. And I think we've got that wrong historically, because we always say followers are, don't be one.
Yeah.
Oh, they're just a follower. And if you ever hear that again, just know the person saying it is not viewing it through the right lens.
Yeah.
I mean, the truth is every single person, I could be a head coach. Here's another way to look at it, is like the A versus the. Just because I'm not the leader doesn't make me not a leader. No, I'm absolutely a leader, even if I'm not the leader, right? The A versus the. And the truth is, it's that dance. I love the way you just phrased that, Tyler. It's the dance. And when you start talking about high-performing cultures and leaders that are thriving, frankly, there's a good chance that when they are thriving in leadership, it is because their team is thriving in followership.
Sure.
Okay? That is helping allow their leadership to take place, to grow. And you've got to work on both areas. But once again, I just don't think we do, because it's, I know it. And in fact, one of the most common sayings in sports is, hey, we need leaders to step up. We need leaders to step up. And I challenge those when I'm out at clinics and such. If you've ever said that, raise your hand. Tyler, hands always go up.
Mm-hmm.
Coaches always say we need leaders to step up. Well, peel back the layers. So are you telling me you think there's no one on this team who wants to step up for you? Is that what you're implying? Hold on, that doesn't seem right. That doesn't seem accurate. You're a football team, you got 60, there's no one in here that wants to honor you, coach, and step up and be a leader? I doubt that, coach. In fact, I think there are people in this room that want to step up for you, that want to kind of honor you in that request, right? Most people want to honor coach, right? So then you guys just ask the question, well, why are they not? Why are they not? Okay, maybe they lack confidence. Maybe they don't know. Wow. Why are they so unconfident around family? What do you mean family? Well, I've watched the last 5 practices. 1, 2, 3, family. This brotherhood, this sisterhood that you all keep talking about. Why do they lack confidence to speak up? Well, because they've gotten burned a couple times. Oh yeah, because they've stepped out and they've tried and they got pushback, or someone told them to back up, or just take it easy and chill out and quit being a suck up and quit trying to be a try hard. You know what? Your issue is not leadership. It is followership. And if you're not careful, your followership is burning out your leadership one by one, day by day, over and over. But if we can go start holistically working on your program as a whole, working on both facets, where they know they have a performance responsibility, hence why we love the term enjoyable to lead. Easy to lead is compliance heavy, Tyler. So think about this. Yeah. Challenging to lead is defiance. Easy to lead is compliance. Enjoyable to lead is performance responsibility initiative. I've got to respond in such a way every time you step out to lead me to actually fill you with joy. Because enjoy, to put joy in. Now, all of a sudden, you bring up something in practice, I've got to support you. And we actually have little habit building kind of exercises that help support those initiatives to be a better follower in your followership. To then, begin to create this spiral, this kind of momentum that every time I step out to lead, I'm filled with joy because my teammates respond in such a way that all of a sudden I find myself giving more because every time I do, I'm filled more with joy. So it actually becomes self-serving, right? But that's okay because I'm getting filled with joy every time I lead you. But frankly, you're getting the most out of me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a big, man, yeah. we love talking about it, but it's the game changer in the team environment that's not often talked about.
Let's take a big step back. Obviously, you're passionate about it. Obviously, you've done a lot of work in the space and see the dynamic. Why? What's right here in your heart why you're doing this? Like, where did it come from for you? Was there experience with a coach? Like, why? Like, unpack that for me. Help me understand and help the audience understand, why is Adam, like, why is this such a big deal to him?
I never had like a coach that was like changed my life per se, where all of a sudden like I felt like this need to like give back of sorts. I am just deeply passionate about helping people win. And I think a lot of that is fueled from my faith. I think a lot of that is fueled from, I'm certainly not good in everything. There are many areas that God did not give me a gift. And they are shortcomings. I mean, if I got to like fix anything around my house right now, like my greatest tool is my wallet, I mean, I'm not the most handy guy. There's a lot of areas where I do not have skill sets, but I do recognize, I think God has given me an ability to connect and then to engage people and a passion and a fire to help move people forward and excite them and help teach them and coach them. That I think it's a combination of one, just having a passion to see people win while recognizing that it's in line with a gift that God has given me to speak and to teach and to inspire. And I think when you put it all together, it's just like, Tyler, I see I'm in the place that I'm supposed to be in.
Yeah.
It's really, really cool. I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And it just fuels me. It lights me up, man. And I love seeing people grow. I love seeing people win, bottom line. And so I don't know, it's just a deep, deep desire. And I mean, I think like most people, coming out of my late teens, early 20s, I went through a couple years of just real challenge and real pain and real rock bottom type stuff that, after that, probably when I was around 22 and really turned the corner, that fire just got, was burning inside to just want to help people win.
I think about that. You say that, there wasn't a coach that really impacted you one or the other. But I know that's not the case for a lot of people listening. Yeah, it's not the case for me, that I had coaches that, really, I would say, did the opposite. There was even I mentioned to you earlier on the beginning of this call, how I, really learned more about Lead 'em Up was my son's high school football coach. And, he was in a situation where he had, in a short amount of time, I would say less than desirable coach to an amazing coach. And even this morning, I'm driving him to school. His sister's out of town, so she isn't driving him. And he goes, "Dad, this is what makes my current coach so much better than my other coach who didn't get it, is last night at 11 o'clock, he sent me a text and say, 'Hey man, yesterday, when you were kicking, that was some of the best kicking you've ever done. You're really starting to hit your stride. That's amazing.'" And he went into it. That had such a dramatic impact. And he goes, "My old coach would have never said anything like that. A year ago, he was in Spain playing soccer, and that was his coach. And now all of a sudden, he's not even playing the sport because that coach would have never sent him a message to say, 'Hey, I'm proud of you. Hey, I see the work you're doing. Hey, you matter.'" And so as you bring that up, not having that, but I know so many people do, or you have a coach who is working their way up. They are trying to just, how do I get the next win? How do I get the next championship? I'll do it at any cost because I want to get to the next level. And they don't realize doing what my son's kicking coach did is the pathway. Right? That's all it is. You have a kid who is almost 16 years old that will go work his absolute tail off because of someone seeing him. And we have a world where, it's so much noise. They just don't want to be seen. And I think back in the past, maybe coaches that, you and I played for, that were like, "You're either not good enough or I'm trying to get mine. I'll sell you out." I think of, Art Briles, Baylor, right? He was at Stephenville, won tons of state championships, and then goes to Baylor and just falls on his face because he's all about himself. And there's all the turmoil in the program. We can go through many other situations. I say all of that because I want to know, is it professionally that's understanding it better? Is it college that's understanding it better? Or is it the grassroots and the high school and youth that is saying, "Hey, We can't be like that guy who doesn't care, just all about the wins. I don't care what you did for me. If we didn't win, you're dead to me. If you can't show up to practice because your family situation, I don't care, you're dead to me. Or is it the coach at the highest level? I think of people like a Mike McDaniel, who I'm enamored with because of just the person he is, and you can tell people love him. Is it, a Dan Hurley who's done so well? Is it a Mark Few at Gonzaga? So that's a rant, but man, I'd love for you to just take all of that and spin it to say, this is what it is. This is what I see.
I think they're all getting it right and they're all getting it wrong.
Okay.
I mean, I think it's so individualized. I think there's great, leaders that are leaning into this at the professional level, the collegiate level, the high school and the youth level. And there are coaches at the youth, high school, collegiate, and professional levels that aren't. And I think coaches' responsibility is to deeply examine their process on how they get the most out of their people. I think that's what they have to keep, because isn't that the goal? I mean, isn't that the goal, to get the most out of your people? And you have to deeply examine that and put everything on the table. Put everything on the table and explore every way, shape, form that is possible to get the most out of your people. And to your point of your son's coach, to some coaches, that would be soft. That would be soft, right? Sending them a message of encouragement at 11 o'clock. That'd be viewed as soft. You know what I say? It's not soft if it's smart. If that is a smart approach to getting this kid more committed, more competitive, more confident, isn't that what you want? I mean, like, hello, am I preaching? Like, hello, am I not? Like, what the heck? Isn't that what you want? So why don't you explore everything?
Well, I mean, you bring soft into me. That's just like, I mean, again, why are you doing what you're doing? It's compassion. It's young athletes that are, especially in today's world, I think yearning differently for recognition and matter. And it's like, hey, I see you. And, we also, wrestle with that in our society. And this turns over into the workplace. Oh, I can't give them accolades because then they won't take it serious. I'm like, really?
They'll take advantage of me and stuff like that. And like, no.
Well, I had somebody the other day and they were telling me about, they have an engineering office and, it's now so much remote and it's difficult because people don't work. And there's like, we just got to force them back to the office. I'm like, that'll never happen. It'll never happen. So instead of thinking that is going to be the force into compliance and people caring, why don't you just lead better? Why don't you just show that, hey, you're meaningful? I like it. When you're engaged, man, we do so much better, but that's on you to engage them instead of saying, well, I'm going to force you into the room. We're going to do 2-a-days. We're going to do the team building stuff, but you're not focused on the people building because the people make up the team. Mm-hmm. And I think in my experience, it comes back into, it's a total change in dynamic. We never used to have to do that. Now we do. And 2 is, well, that isn't leadership. That's just, babysitting, or that's just, it's too soft, to your point. A leader is that hard, and these are the deadlines and so much accountability. And yet, I don't think it works like that.
I would actually just argue, if someone thinks that, I just don't think they truly understand what leadership entails. Yeah. I mean, even if you look at the corporate style of leadership, I mean, there's 6 styles. I mean, just historically speaking, right? Coach, servant, visionary, autocratic, autonomous, and collective, right? And the autocratic is the tough one, right? The servant is going to be more the hands, come alongside that person. I mean, there's all different facets of leadership, and you've got to be able to kind of bounce around and be able to tackle the one that is most needed in the moment. And you know what? Maybe there are some moments that do require that firm line in the sand, right? Stern. And if you can bring that out in that moment, great. You need it, you should, and it is warranted. But there's also many, many moments of leadership that is warranted, of like 11 o'clock text to a young person saying, man, I'm just proud of what you've been doing. I see the work. I see the results. You build into this little phrase, to that which gets praised gets repeated, right? When you begin to build in those celebrations, and now all of a sudden they want to do more of it because they want more of that celebration, and the way it makes them feel. Once again, coaches have to your point, I love what you said, Tyler. Like, well, we didn't have to do this once before. We didn't have to do this once before. And, I mean, even if you look at like emotional intelligence, that was a late 90s revolution, Daniel Goleman in his book, right? I mean, it's late 90s. So we're talking even emotional intelligence, 25 years, 30 years in. Okay, it's not like been around forever.
I'll throw in another facet. John Wooden's pyramid. The guy you just described about understanding all those plans, do all those, that was John Wooden. And that was like 60 years ago.
Now, in all fairness, so like, but like what I try to tell coaches, like, you're right, you may not have done that in a couple decades ago, but guess what? We've learned.
Yeah.
We've learned that you can actually get more from people taking a slightly different approach. We've learned some different ways. We've learned some ways to accomplish it greater. And well, no, not these kids these days. No, these kids are just, you're not going to reach these kids these days. You know what? Let me tell you this. No. If you say that, if you ever find someone saying that, nope, can't reach these kids these days. Nope, they're just not going to do it. Nope. That is a self-indictment on themselves. They don't realize it. They are literally throwing themselves under the bus, because guess what? Oh, that's interesting, because the program down the street, yeah, they have record numbers, and their kids are wanting to go above and beyond, and they do more for that coach than they ever would. And they show up on Saturdays, and they invite their friends, and they're recruiting to their classmates. Oh, really? So what's the difference? Because those kids are the same age as your kids. What's different? Oh, yeah, the leadership, the culture. If you ever hear people say, you know what, no, you can't get Gen Z to show up and to do extra work in the workplace. Oh, really? Because Gen Z is knocking on the door of some organizations wanting to get in. They're just not knocking on your door.
I saw something last week. University of Colorado Boulder had over 64,000 applicants because of one man showing what you just said, building excitement. There's going to be high accountability. There's no question Dion walked in and said, there's a lot of accountability here. But there's a lot of reward. There's a lot of praise. There's a lot of excitement. And people are flocking to be there. And so to that point, it's like people are like, well, I mean, you just can't. No, you can. You absolutely can. But guess what? You can't use the same tools that you fell into, because, it's a classic, which I found wasn't Jim Harbaugh. It was another coach that said it, is, you woke up on third base and thought you hit a triple, right? So yeah. Jim can get lauded for that. Jim didn't make it up. I think it was Jim Leland or someone. It was somebody else.
But I do think Harbaugh brought it up about.
Yeah, let's not go there.
About Ryan Day.
No, let's shit. Adam, we were doing so good today.
We were doing
so
but you're in the Pacific
good.
Northwest. You're in the Pacific Northwest.
Oh, I'm a Buckeye, though. I'm a Buckeye. So, all right. Anyways, I was the one that stepped into it. So, but you come to this and you're like, well, we got away with doing it before. We'll just keep doing it. Like, no. It really is the classic, what got you here won't get you there. And if we consistently think, oh, I just have to go back and do what I did when I was a kid because that coach did it, but we don't see it from that same lens, right? We just can't. It's
interesting. I just had a end of the season review with one of my coaches where I'm the leadership coach for them on staff there. And, it's end of year 3. And even in that regard, I'm sitting there like processing all the things I need to do different next year. And I do this for a living. And I have a formula that works. We have a framework that works. Thousands of teams across the country are using the framework we've created. It works. Even in the midst of the framework, I'm still looking at it saying, you know what? Hey, we need to make a couple tweaks. We need to approach it slightly different because we've got a different group of kids this year.
Totally.
They're at a different stage. There's a different attitude and behavior, right? I'm not going to change it holistically, maybe on an 80-20, right? 80% consistent, but I've got to kind of change some of the outliers, some of the little peripheral work that we do, maybe change it slightly from a motivational strategy, kind of tweak a couple things. And this is what I do.
Yeah.
I mean, I could go into those programs and say, listen, I do this across the country. You all better listen. This is how it's going to be. And I'm sitting there like, man, how do I tweak the 20% on the outliers on the peripheral to make it land even greater?
Well, then you open up for that 20% that you're not. One final question. I posted a story on Instagram this morning that we're going to have this. And one of the questions that came up, and this is from someone that viewed it, and I think it is a great final question. Okay, everyone's listened to this conversation, right? And they've said, I get it. Okay, I see it. And they're the coach like, I want it. But yet their administration is it going to show up in wins? It's transactional. How do you get them to buy in? Because we can have coaches that are transactional. You could have administrators that are transactional. How do you bridge that gap?
It's a great question. Certainly understand why somebody would ask it, right? Because it's one that's being faced by many people around the country. And I think so much of it is communication of expectations at the forefront. I mean, it's very important to kind of have some of those conversations early on and kind of establish the expectations. Hey, coming into the program, what is the expectation?
Yeah.
Or maybe you've been there and a new administration has come in. Okay. What is the expectation? And I need to know firmly because my coaching approach will change dramatically based on what our conversation is here right now. So there has to be a clear-cut communication. And if frankly, they say let's say they lean more towards the transformational. Okay. Awesome. What you will see from me is I will capture a series of wins year over year, and I will demonstrate those to you. And I will let you go on this journey with me to see the growth that I'm exhibiting. Right. And it's going to be different. It's going to be different. And I just was with a coach the other day who is battling this right now as we speak. And he and I kind of put together a presentation of sorts for him to present back because there was a little bit of that angst. For example, they didn't win a lot this year, but he also knows they could have won 4 or 5 more games if his goal was to win right now. He would have brought up some people that he left on JV to kind of get more playing time, right? That he wanted to kind of give them the opportunity to develop. He would have brought them up, right? He would have kind of not poured into some of the sophomores and juniors that were playing up, where he gave them valuable crunch time minutes in certain games, where he even kind of had to sacrifice some seniors because he knows what's coming down the pipeline. He would have changed that and actually played the seniors that maybe could have got us the wins but hurt us in the future. And we literally went and created a dual roadmap. One of, this is how the season played out when, these wins, but this is what we were doing. This is how, had we chosen to go the path that somewhat, and this administrator was on the fence. I'll put it like that. Not to call them out. They were on the fence. They kind of want best of both. They want the wins and they're kind of putting the pressure, but they don't want to say we don't care about the development in the long term. Yep. So they're like trying to play that fence of like, no, yep. I'm about the kids, but I'm also about the wins.
Yep.
So we actually drew a model and we showed it. We said, this is what it would have looked like this year had we been strictly transactional. We envision we would have won this level. This is what we would have done differently. It would have generated X amount of wins, we believe. We think we would have won this game, and this game. And that's what it would have looked like if you were strictly looking at me to win games. Don't grade me, please, on the record I have right now. Grade me on that record because I could have got you that this year because this is a new administration. He literally said, I could have got you that this year if you wanted. Grade me on that record. But I didn't go that route. I went this route. We did lose this game. Let me show you what happened though. Right? We did choose to keep some sophomores on JV. Look at the record of JV, right? And he began to paint this picture of like, hey, I sacrificed a little bit this year because there's a long-term gain. And I tell you, it casted a vision that made complete buy-in from the administration. They were blown away by the dual vision because they could see, and it actually almost kind kind of pushed them back to say, wow, you know what, frankly, I can't just be all about wins.
Yeah.
Because that is so short-sighted. And I think it actually quieted that side of their head, that little that desire, we need to win. I think it actually shut it down and actually got them to see in a bigger picture what it could look like. And at the end, and they have since been, according to the coach, almost so much more just like, hey, whatever you need. Hey, we believe in you. We support you. And it was a great point. You know what I mean, Tyler? I mean, if you wanted me to do that, I could have done that. Listen, next year's going to be that much more rougher for you.
Yeah.
Or you could allow me to do it the way I'm doing it, documented it fully, showing all the wins, progress, growth, advantages moving forward. And it was a pretty powerful little tool. So I think you speak to both sides. You can tell both stories. And if you are transformational, help them understand how your transformational is building for the long term. And is really the approach that should be established by any coach leading a program for the holistic good, not just for the temporary good.
I mean, that's such a great testament of showing that vision and then taking people with you on that way. Adam, again, thank you so much. Where can people learn more about you and your work?
Yeah, I mean, primarily all through Lead 'em Up. leademup.com, LEADEMUP, working with youth, high school, collegiate, and professional teams, helping them, once again, move closer to winning and doing it through our leadership and character lens. So, Tyler, I appreciate the opportunity.
Well, thank you. And thank you so much for your time. And thank you all our viewers and listeners. Remember to subscribe on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. By rating and reviewing each episode, you can help more people discover impactful leaders like Adam. Until next time, choose to lead with impact.